picked up something this week that I really did not want to buy. This here is a Searzall. Search for it on the internet, look at videos on YouTube. Lots of hype around this device here. It attaches to the end of a propane torch and helps you sear stuff. Now I have a perfectly good source of flaming hot methane in my kitchen already, and that's the broiler inside of my oven. And it's not only a huge source of flame, it's also in an enclosed space. And I'm kind of like, why do you need something like this? So I've been trying for a long time to sear things like steak under the broiler, even going so far as, say, holding the piece of meat with tongs and getting into the flame and stuff. But kind of difficult to do. I don't have a great ventilation system. I have external venting, but I don't have a really awesome exhaust vent. And so this kind of stuff often smokes up my kitchen, and it's been very difficult to really get a good sear while not simultaneously smoking up my kitchen or being able to keep stuff rare. So I ordered one of these, and while I was ordering, I watched some videos on YouTube, and there was a person who was having trouble actually getting this thing to sear their meat. It was going on 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, no sear. And that got me a bit concerned. You know, is this thing going to be a dud? Turns out it actually works quite well. And there are some nuances in the way that the Searzall works that I kind of want to show you. So, pull down the trigger on this thing, and this will leave flame, right? And there's a recommended searing distance depending on what you're searing. So for instance, if I sear up real close, right? Let me take out of these 2 pieces of bread. This pan is cold, by the way. Let me get it real close. And this bread is toasty in seconds, but it's actually not quite that toasty because it didn't really get that much heat. So it's kind of crispy, but it's not actually like toast. It's only a little bit toasty on the outside, and it's still pretty much cold on the inside despite having some surface. Whereas for toast, kind of the recommended distance is not quite so close. If I'm up here at perhaps 2 inches or 3 inches, this is clearly a lot slower. All right, there we go. Now we got some browning. Oops. So you can see that it took a lot longer at that height to get what visually looks like the same amount of browning. But now this toast actually, right, the bottom is warm even, and this is more like, it's more like toast. So the distance makes a really big difference in terms of what you can achieve with the Searzall. If you need a sear on the outside and you don't want too much heat to transfer into the whatever it is that you're searing, because maybe it's already cooked, you get really close, and the amount of heat that gets into the surface is and the heat intensity really is tremendous compared to, right, this bottom here is still essentially kind of cold on the bottom. This guy is warm all the way through. It'll transfer a lot more heat because you are searing longer without, you know, burning the top. And that really turned out to be the big difference when doing things like meat. So let me clear this bread out of the way. I will eat that bread later. I've got here ribeye. Small ribeye, I think it's about 0.75 pounds, 12 ounces, not super big. Then I'm going to sear. Now when searing, the key thing really is you got to make sure that the surface is real dry. If your surface isn't dry, you're going to have trouble. Let me dry off the surface. All I've done is rub this with salt and let it sit out on the counter for a while. A while meaning like about 35 minutes. So this is good and dry. Now we see if we can sear this thing and make maybe like a black and blue. Remember, the pan is cold. I didn't do that super well. I should have been a little bit more concentrated. But you can take a look here. You can see that, all right, pretty black. Time has passed though. So let me flip this guy over and see if I can do better on this side. Dry off the surface. So this will give us a pretty blackened sear. Now the question is, is it actually a black and blue? So let me cut into it. Let's try over here. And yes, you can see that it is totally red and totally rare on the inside. Let me get the... So that's actually more rare than I want to eat it, so I'm going to stick this in the oven for a bit. But it is possible to get a seared crust and leave the inside essentially raw using this device. Just to give you a slightly better look in different color temperature, this is kind of what it looks like. See that this thing is actually fairly cool, so I can lift it by hand. You can see how it's still fairly pretty much raw in the middle.